Alrighty, so I just want to start this off by saying that I'm sorry for not getting to the week one. Had some stuff kind of come up in my life where I wasn't able to exactly do it at the time. I'm sorry about that. I know maybe some of you are actually looking forward to that. I was looking forward to doing it. Just some stuff happened, and unfortunately, I couldn't get to it. But that being said, we are into week two now. I will show you what week two will bring. I will recap what happened with the week one games, give you my predictions going forward, and hopefully, we will keep this going on a consistent basis. So to start, let's recap week one with the first game showing the COVID-19, previously known as Two in the Pink, One in the Stink, versus the Rain City Bitch Pigeons. And COVID-19's roster looks like this. You had Aaron Rodgers, Todd Gurley, Raheem Mostert, Mike Evans, Odell Beckham Jr., Travis Kelce, Stephon Diggs, the 49ers defense, and Justin Tucker. While the Rain City Bitch Pigeons box score and roster looks like this, with Russell Wilson at QB, Chris Carsons, David Johnson, Tyreek Hill, DK Metcalf, George Kittle, Brandon Cooks, the Saints defense, and Mason Crosby. And I'll be honest, I had me winning this one in my prediction video with the first week one. I know it didn't get published. Never really got fully finished. But I did have me winning, and I did end up winning by a score of 153.68 to a total of 125.56. At no surprise, the big performers on each team were the quarterbacks of Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers. They're two of the top five quarterbacks in the league, in my opinion. But outside those guys, the big performers, I had Chris Carson going off for 24.6 points, and he had Raheem Mostert going off for 25.1. But in the end, the Bitch Pigeons get the win, move on to 1-0, and COVID-19 drops to 0-1. Hopefully, this will be the end of COVID-19. Alrighty, for the next game on the slate, we had the defending champions Green Bay Pack Attack going up against the CMC Elators. I don't know if that's their actual, I've just been calling them the CMC Elators. I don't know why, but that's just what I've been calling them. I'm sure if the guys in the league listen to this, they'll tell me if I'm wrong, just like they did with the Cooper Cup, Connor Cup situation last year. But so the Pack Attack's roster looks like this. You have quarterback, you have Deshaun Watson, you have Austin Eckler, Nick Chubb, Devontae Adams, Robert Woods, Evan Ingram, Sterling Shepard, the Lions D, and Jake Elliott. And on the CMC later side, you had Dak Prescott, Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, Chris Godwin, Calvin Ridley, Zach Ertz, Boston Scott, the Bills D, and Will Lutz. Now, in my predictions, I actually had this one going differently. I thought the Pack Attack were going to win, but it ended up being the CMC Elators, and I'll break that down for you. The CMC Elators won 148.14 to 113.22. The big performers for the CMC Elators was Calvin Ridley at 33.9, and the big performer for the Pack Attack was Devontae Adams with 41.6. The good thing for the CMC Elators was they had consistent performing throughout. Christian McCaffrey, of course, getting 28.4 points is no big slouch, but he had consistent 10 and up on everyone except for Boston Scott, who is his flex. But that's where it hurts the Pack Attack. The Pack Attack did not have consistent performances. 9.7 from Eckler, 5.6 from Nick Chubb, 2.9 from Evan Ingram. So in a sense, it's a shame that Devontae Adams had such a big game and that it was kind of for naught. But you know what? I mean, if he can get better help on the running back side, then you know what? He'll go far for a repeat. And if CMC later can keep doing stuff like this, it's going to be hard to beat him all year. Especially considering that on his bench he has Melvin Gordon, Marquise Brown, Henry Ruggs, J.K. Dobbins. Just a scary team to end up looking at, and it's a shame that the defending champs had to face him first round, and hopefully, people can try and find a way to beat him. So now we're going to go to another game that I got wrong in my predictions, and that would be Team the Old Goat versus the Charleston Titans. Old Goat's roster looks like this. You got Drew Brees, Josh Jacobs, Antonio Gibson, DJ Chark Jr., Preston Williams, Mark Andrews, Will Fuller V, the Cowboys D, and Harrison Butker. Going up against Patrick Mahomes, Ezekiel Elliott, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, A.J. Brown, Jarvis Landry, T.J. Hawkinson, Michael Gallup, the Titans D, and Ryan Suckup. And I won't lie, I actually had the Titans winning this. Sorry, Dad, I know you probably aren't too happy to hear that, but now you can rub it in my face that I was wrong. But let's kind of break this game down. Obviously, for the Old Goats, the big performer for them was Josh Jacobs at 35.9 points. That's a huge game. And for the Titans, I would have thought it would have been Clyde Edwards-Helaire that would have had the bigger game. But it turns out Ezekiel Elliott had a bigger game than I thought he did. But this game was really close kind of throughout the week. I was kind of watching. I didn't know what way it was going to go. Had no clue who was going to win there for a while. I know that, in my opinion, I thought that the Titans had the better roster, especially with Elliott and Mahomes. But it just goes to show that sometimes random things happen, and this is what happened there. And it'll be interesting to watch these two teams going forward. But the GOAT do get the win, 126.3 to 119.54, and that's how close that was. Next, we have a lineup against Philip Rivers' Child Army going up against Slob on my Cobb. And this is one that I actually got right, but I didn't think it was going to be as close as it was, and I'll explain that kind of going through here. But first, I'm going to go through the rosters. On the Child Army side, you had Tom Brady, Kenyon Drake, Joe Mixon, Cooper Kupp, Tyler Lockett, Rob Gronkowski, Leonard Fournette, the Bears D, and Matt Prater. For Slob on my Cobb, you had Matt Ryan, Le'Veon Bell, Marlon Mack, Julio Jones, Juju Smith-Schuster, Jack Doyle, Keenan Allen, the Vikings D, and Austin Seibert. And while Slob on my Cobb did win 94.3 to 83.6, I believe his defense and kicker knew that they were on this team and tried to actually make him lose, because between those two, he actually lost 10 points in this week with those guys. The Vikings defense getting spanked and giving them -9 points. Because remember, you start off with 10 and you subtract from there. But they actually dropped down to -9, and his kicker got -1. But for his big performance, he got it from Juju Smith-Schuster, getting a 24.9 points. On the Child Army side, it was Tom Brady. He got 20.46. His next best player was Tyler Lockett at 17.2. But both these teams, they kept it really close and everything. So, I mean, it was a really close matchup throughout the entire week. I'm sure Slob Makal was really hoping his defense and kicker would have done better. And I'm sure they're going to be hoping for that this next coming week. But still to go in, scrape out, get the W. In the end of the day, that's all that really matters. So on to our next matchup, and again, here's another one that I got wrong. It's the Mr. Steal Your Girly going up against the First and Ben. And it was First and Ben coming away with the victory at 116.46 against 97. So let's break down the rosters and kind of explain on who the big performers were here. So on Mr. Steal Your Girly side, you have Lamar Jackson, Aaron Jones, James Conner, T.Y. Hilton, Emmanuel Sanders, Hayden Hurst, Deshaun Jackson, the Colts D, and Young Ho Koo. While on the First and Ben side, you have Big Ben, Dalvin Cook, Mark Ingram, Michael Thomas, Adam Thielen, Darren Waller, Marvin Jones Jr., the Steelers D, and Greg Zuerlein. And like I said, I lost my prediction on this one. I thought it was going to be Mr. Steal Your Girly, whose best performer was, in fact, Lamar Jackson at 27.5 points. But other than that, his big performer was Aaron Jones at 17.6. Then it was Emmanuel Sanders at 10.5. But then no one else got above 10 outside of that. Meanwhile, over on the First and Ben side, his big performer was Dalvin Cook at 21.6. Then again, I'm also wrong because I forgot to look down further, and it was Adam Thielen at 31. Got really lucky with Mark Ingram only getting 2.9 and 4.7 from Michael Thomas. But when 4 people contribute 80 points, then you're going to have a pretty good time, plus your defense giving you an extra 10. So far, getting right ahead in the last game, on my personal predictions, I am 2-3. So let's head in the last one, introduce the last two teams, go over their game, and then let's get ready to go on to week 2. So this is another one I actually got right on this one, which will make me 3-3 on the season so far in predicting games within our league. And it was the Toledo Woodpeckers going up against the Beer Bongs and Barkleys. On the Woodpecker side, he's got Carson Wentz, Alvin Kamara, Devin Singletary, DeAndre Hopkins, DJ Moore, Tyler Higbee, Allen Robbins II, the Ravens defense, and Robbie Gould. Meanwhile, on Beer Bong and Barkley's side, you've got Cam Newton, Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, Tyler Boyd, Randall Cobb, Dallas Goedert, James Robinson, the Chargers D, and Brandon McManus. And the Woodpeckers ended up winning here 126.8 to 112.9. His top 2 performers were, no surprise here, in DeAndre Hopkins at 29.1 and Alvin Kamara at 23.7. While on Beer Bong and Barkley's side, it was 25.7 from Cam Newton leading the way, with Dallas Goedert getting 24.1. And I'm sure Beer Bong and Barkley's are a little upset that they didn't start Sammy Watkins this week, who had 21.5 on the bench, instead of like a Randall Cobb, who had a 4.3. But that's just one of the things you can't really predict. And so the Woodpeckers gets the win, and we get ready to move on to our Week 2 matchups. So now we move on to our Week 2 predictions, and we'll start off with the Rain City Bitch Pigeons going up against the Charleston Titans. And tentatively, these are what the starting rosters look up as of right now at Thursday at 5 o'clock. For the Bitch Pigeons, we got Russell Wilson, Chris Carson, David Johnson, Tyreek Hill, DK Metcalf, George Kittle, Kareem Hunt, the Saints D, and Mason Crosby. Meanwhile, for the Titans, we've got Patrick Mahomes, Ezekiel Elliott, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, A.J. Brown, Jarvis Landry, T.J. Hawkinson, Michael Gallup, the Titans D, and Ryan Suckup. So for the projections matrix that ESPN has, they have the Titans winning at this point. They have the edge in QB and both running backs. I've got the edge in the number 1 wide receiver. He's got the edge in the number 2 wide receiver. But then I have the edge in tight end, flex, defense, and kickers. But let me tell you how I think it's going to happen. I think the Rain City Bitch Pigeons will in fact be beating the Charleston Titans. I think they are undervaluing how much that Chris Carson's could get. I think they're probably about spot on what David Johnson could get. I think they're undervaluing what DK Metcalf's going to get because I don't think he's going to line up against Stephon Gilmore in New England. And it's also at home for the Seahawks. And we all know that the Seahawks do significantly better at home than they do on the road. That's not saying that I don't think their projections for the Titans are correct. I believe Michael Gallup could probably get the 13.4. I think TJ Hawkinson could very well easily get 10. But in the end, I do think the Bitch Pigeons will pull out the victory against the Titans. Next, we got a big rivalry game against COVID-19 versus the Green Bay Pack Attack. In fact, I was playing on PlayStation with both of them earlier today, and they did not actually talk about this one at all. I was a little disappointed about it. But I'm sure Monday, whenever the scores are kind of over, then we'll kind of hear some more kind of shit-talking and everything. But so let's break down their starting rosters right now. On COVID-19, you've got Aaron Rodgers, Todd Gurley, Raheem Mostert, Mike Evans, OBJ, Travis Kelce, Stephon Diggs, the 49ers defense, and Justin Tucker. While for the Pack Attack, you've got Deshaun Watson, Austin Eckler, Nick Chubb, Devontae Adams, Robert Woods, Evan Ingram, Malcolm Brown, the Cardinals D, and Jake Elliott. So ESPN has the quarterback and the running back 1 going to the Pack Attack, running back 2 going to the COVID-19, both wide receiver slots going to the Pack Attack, but tight end, flex, defense, kicker, all go towards the COVID-19, and ESPN has COVID-19 beating the Pack Attack. And I'll keep it completely honest with you people here. This is a rivalry game. There's not going to be any, they want to win this more than they probably do most games, just because of how much they crap talk each other. Probably the second best rivalry in this fantasy football league. But here's how I think it's going to go down. I think Nick Chubb is going to do a lot better than what ESPN's predicting. He's facing a terrible Cincinnati team. And I think they might be overvaluing what Mike Evans can do. And I've said this once, I'll say it again. The reason why Mike Evans and Chris Godwin were such good fantasy last year is because Jameis Winston's a gunslinger, will throw it down the field. Yeah, he had 30 interceptions, but he also just threw it down the field without a care, which made great for long receptions and everything. Tom Brady doesn't throw it down the field like Jameis Winston does. He just doesn't. He can't anymore, I feel. I'm not saying Tom Brady isn't still one of the best quarterbacks in the game right now. I'm just saying, fantasy-wise, the Tampa Bay wide receivers aren't going to get the same production that they did last year. And to me, that's a big risk, especially whenever he's your top wide receiver and is your second highest projected person behind your quarterback right now. And I say all that to get to this on who I think will actually win this rivalry game in week 2. But at the end of the day, I still get this gut feeling that the COVID-19 will win this one. And I don't know why. I take a look at the Pack Attack's roster, and I feel like he's got the better roster and the better lineup, but only in certain areas. I think that the overall team with the COVID-19 has more, maybe more pop, and maybe more, okay, these guys are going to be more consistent players. I look at guys like Robert Woods and Evan Ingram who can do it, but can they do it consistently? Can Malcolm Brown do it consistently? Can Eckler? Can Chubb? Those are guys I have question marks about. But I look over there, I know OBJ is probably good for about 10 to 15. Travis Kelce's good for about 10 to 15. Stephon Diggs is good for about 10 to 15. Gurley, 10 to 15. Mostert, probably around 10. Easy, even on bad weeks. So yeah, the more I look at it, the more I'm going to go, yeah, I think COVID-19 will win this. I think it's going to be damn close. Next, we have an interesting matchup going against the CMC Elators against Team the Old Goat. And ESPN has this one kind of a bit of a blowout here. So let's take a look at the lineups. The CMC Elators have Dak Prescott, Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, Calvin Ridley, Marquise Brown, Zach Ertz, Chris Godwin, the Bills D, and Will Lutz. While Team the Old Goat has Drew Brees, Josh Jacobs, Antonio Gibson, DJ Chark Jr., Preston Williams, Mark Andrews, Will Fuller, the Chiefs D, and Harrison Butker. And there's only two places that the GOAT have the advantage according to ESPN, and that would be in tight end and in kicker. And they also have a huge margin of victory going for the CMC Elators at almost 26 points. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how this one goes out. I do agree. I think the CMC Elators are they're a stacked team this year. It's going to be hard to beat them unless barring injury. I think that they've got probably the best team in the league right now. And it's going to be very hard to beat them in general. Next, we move on to another matchup of Mr. Steal Your Girly going up against Philip Rivers' Child Army. And the starting rosters look like this. On Mr. Steal Your Girly, you've got Lamar Jackson, Aaron Jones, Ronald Jones II, Amari Cooper, A.J. Green, Hayden Hurst, T.Y. Hilton, the Colts defense, and Young Ho Koo. And on the Philip Rivers Child Army side, you've got Tom Brady, Kenyon Drake, Joe Mixon, Cooper Kupp, Tyler Lockett, Rob Gronkowski, Leonard Fournette, the Bears D, and Matt Prater. ESPN metrics give the advantage to Mr. Steal Your Girly in everything but running back number 2, defense, and kicker. They have them winning by a total of 7 points. And kind of looking at it, I'm not sure how this one's going to go personally. I mean, yeah, sure. I think Lamar Jackson, Aaron Jones, and Ronald Jones beat a combination of Tom Brady, Kenyon Drake, and Joe Mixon. But does a combo of Amari Cooper and A.J. Green beat Cooper Kupp and Tyler Lockett? And in my opinion, I really don't think it does. I think Tyler Lockett and Cooper Kupp are a little bit more consistent than Amari Cooper and A.J. Green are. And that's not knocking an Amari Cooper. It's more of a knock against A.J. Green. Especially going into a Thursday night game, we all know how the Bengals aren't the best whenever they've got the spotlight shining on them. And it's the first big boy game, I guess you could say, for Joe Burrow. So how much is that going to mess with him? The tight ends, in my opinion, are kind of a wash. I believe that there could be a better flex matchup for Philip Rivers' Child Army here instead of Leonard Fournette. So maybe they'll correct that. If they do, if they go with the person in my mind who I think it is, I think they beat the T.Y. Hilton matchup. The D's are kind of a wash, but I favor more of the Bears D matchup than the Colts D matchup. And, I mean, the kickers are also both a wash. But so I'm going to give this one, I'm going to predict that the Philip Rivers Child Army will actually get this win here over the Mr. Steal Your Girly. And I think it's going to be a close one still. I don't think it's going to be like by massive margins. But all in all, I still believe that the more consistent players will come out for Philip Rivers Child Army. Next, we'll move on to the matchup of Slava My Cobb going up against the Toledo Woodpeckers. And here's how Slava My Cobb's roster looks like right now. You got Matt Ryan, Miles Sanders, David Montgomery, Julio Jones, Juju Smith-Schuster, Jack Doyle, Keenan Allen, the Vikings D, and Chris Boswell. While the Woodpeckers are throwing out Carson Wentz, Alvin Kamara, Devin Singletary, DeAndre Hopkins, Terry McLaurin, Tyler Higbee, Allen Robinson II, the Ravens D, and Robbie Gould. And so the advantages go like this. With QB, they give it to Matt Ryan and Slava My Cobb. For running back 1, it goes to the Toledo Woodpeckers of Alvin Kamara. Running back 2, it goes to David Montgomery of Chicago, as well as wide receiver to Julio Jones. Both of those are on Slava My Cobb. Then wide receiver 2, tight end, flex, and defensive teams go to the Toledo Woodpeckers with Terry McLaurin, Tyler Higbee, Allen Robinson, and the Ravens defense. And the kicker, they give the nod to Chris Boswell over there on Slava My Cobb. So here's how I think this one will kind of break down. I do believe that the Toledo Woodpeckers will get the win here. The giant question marks with, Julio Jones' health that I've been hearing lately, or at least seeing on Twitter. Overall, I think the combination of Alvin Kamara and DeAndre Hopkins is a very tough combination to try and get past. But that's who I'm going to end up giving this nod to. I think the Woodpeckers will win it. I think, again, the more consistent players out of those guys, they're higher end consistent, but you never know exactly on who's going to come off. Miles Sanders didn't play last week, so who knows how well he's going to be doing. So I say the Woodpeckers, but I wouldn't be surprised if Slava My Cobb won this game. But again, sticking with my gut, sticking with the Woodpeckers. And for the final game we got this week, we got First and Ben going up against Beer Bong and Barclays. And so we're going to take a look at this right now. We're going to take a look at the rosters for First and Ben. You've got Ben Roethlisberger, Dalvin Cook, Mark Ingram, Michael Thomas, Adam Thielen, Darren Waller, Marvin Jones, the Steelers, and Samuel Sloman. And for Beer Bongs and Barkley, you've got Kyler Murray, Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor, Tyler Boyd, Traquan Smith, Dallas Goedert, Danny Amendola, the Browns D, and Rodrigo Blankenship. So here's who ESPN gives the nods to. They've got the nods for quarterback, running back 1, running back 2, and wide receiver 1 to Beer Bongs and Barkley, while wide receiver 2, tight end, flex, defense, and kicker go to First and Ben. And they've got Beer Bongs and Barkley taking the win here, but I think that's going to be changed a little bit. Michael Thomas is doubtful. I doubt he does play on Monday night. So I think if you take away that Michael Thomas, move Marvin Jones up probably to wide receiver, because then you can throw in like a Jamison Crowder, who is meh on it if he's going to play or not this week right now, but like a Matt Breida and Austin Hooper. Maybe you get rid of Antonio Brown and go get a waiver wire pickup. I think this game is going to be a lot closer than that. Who knows how Traquan Smith is going to do. I don't think Jonathan Taylor is going to get the 15.5 points that he's projected to get. Is Tyler Boyd going to do well with a rookie quarterback in his first big boy game and being on Cincinnati and playing a Thursday night game? Is Danny Amendola really only about to get 11 points? And my answer to all that is no, I really don't think so. So I'm actually going to give the nod here and my prediction to First and Ben, and I think that that's what's going to happen here. But so that wraps up week 2. Hopefully you guys actually enjoyed the video. I know it's a bit of a longer one. I tried to give each team a little bit more in-depth look at and everything, and then like I said, that wraps up week 2. That wraps up today's video. I thank you very much for listening and watching. Put your input down there. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me where I'm right. Tell me what your thoughts are, and never forget, JYat, it's where it's at.